Of all of Sally Rooney's novels, Intermezzo is my favourite. I like all Sally Rooney novels, but a large number of people don't enjoy her work at all. She has divided book fans, and this is something I have never understood. Is it just that with a ridiculous amount of fame and success, inevitably comes people who don't like your work? Or is there something about Rooney's writing that divides people? One of my aims while reading Intermezzo, other than it's just a book that I really wanted to read, was to see if I could determine why people are so divided on Sally Rooney's work. And I've come up with a theory. So as I review this novel, I will discuss why I think Rooney is simultaneously so popular and so unpopular. Intermezzo is a novel centering on the Kobreck brothers, Peter and Ivan, who have recently lost their father. There is quite an age gap between the brothers, almost 10 years. Older brother Peter is a successful lawyer living in Dublin. It is initially difficult to tell if he is suffering from depression or if he's just having a tough time of things lately. But that is because the first section is told from Ivan's point of view. As Rooney switches between the two brothers, it gradually becomes clear. Peter has two girlfriends. It's very complicated. His best friend and first true love, Sylvia, suffered an accident, causing her to live with pain and be unable to have intercourse without severe discomfort. Consequently, she broke up with Peter so that he can have a normal life, something Peter hasn't thanked her for. More than best friends and not quite in a relationship, at Sylvia's insistence, Peter dated and met fun-loving Naomi, who is almost a decade younger than him, the same age as Ivan. And while Sylvia is Peter's intellectual equal, Naomi does make him happy. She doesn't come across as stupid, but she's certainly not the erudite polymath that Sylvia is. Both women do complement Peter very well, but in completely different ways. Recent university maths graduate Ivan is a champion chess player, although not if you ask him. He's not even an international master yet, and he's getting rather old. Then Ivan meets Margaret, an older woman who is living in a small town and who has recently left her husband. Scandalous. Margaret is happy to have a night of sex with Ivan, but a relationship. She's far too old for him and doesn't want to take advantage of his age. Ivan, on the other hand, thinks it's up to him to determine if he is being taken advantage of or not. And he likes Margaret, not just sex with Margaret. And these are the 5 characters, along with Peter and Ivan's mother Christine and their father's orphaned dog, that form the characters in the novel. Some people are going to read this book and they're going to say that Ivan comes across as neurodiverse. He's a very logical man with special interests who comes across as socially a little awkward, a little unsure or unusual, if generally nice and harmless. I understand the statement. I agree he reads as on the autism spectrum, but Rooney is not really interested in showing him in that life. He's just simply a person who thinks in a certain way. He has certain interests and motivation. Sally Rooney may have gone intentionally out of her way to write somebody with autism, or she may have simply met somebody with it and decided to incorporate their personality into Ivan. Either way, Ivan is a character I have met before. He is not an exploration of autism or a representation of it to meet quotas. Not that I necessarily think those are bad things, but Ivan is just a character in this novel. Autism or not, he's going to have fights with his brother, he's going to commit to a complicated relationship, and he's going to play some chess. And these are the things that we are going to read about. These are the things that are going to make the novel, not his neurodiverse status. Rooney's writing process really must start with a very detailed character creation, and this is where I think a lot of the love for Rooney's books come from. I can see little pieces of both Ivan and Peter in myself. Ivan's thoughts about having to give up his seat on public transports to pregnant women. They knew the consequences of getting pregnant when they decided to. I'd much rather they weren't pregnant and I get to keep my seat. A stance which he subsequently softens on until he does a complete 180, but the cold logic giving way to empathy and the centering of other people, not yourself, is an exact replica of an internal argument I had when I was a late teenager or in my early 20s. Peter's struggle to do the hard thing in a relationship, trying not to hurt the other person, only to end up hurting them more in the long run, reminds me of a relationship I had with somebody I felt more sorry for than liked. There's nothing quite like seeing your flaws represented in a character you read, seeing them and not having them be judged, and it is Sally Rooney's ability to capture characters in a way that very few authors can that makes her work so popular. This is also why in the opening I said that Intermezzo was my favourite Rooney novel, but I didn't say it was her best. Intermezzo is the first of Rooney's novels that I really felt a personal connection to the characters. Rooney shows the flaws, the things that other characters wouldn't do, the things that distinguish them, and I can't imagine many people intuitively understand Ivan's pregnant lady public transport dilemma. If you fail to see yourself in Rooney's characters, their choices and their decisions can often make no sense to you at all. Her characters can leave you saying, I just don't understand the younger generation, opposite sex, university crowd, rich people, poor people, artsy people, maths people, whatever the difference is that you see between yourself and the characters that Rooney has created. And this can be especially frustrating because, like a lot of literary fiction, the plot is one of the least important aspects of this novel, but it is the choices that the characters make that propel the plot forward, which can leave readers who do not understand the characters' motivations feeling like the plot is very forced. And we're starting to see the foundation of two very different points of view on Rooney's work. People who have met Rooney's characters before and people who have not. But there is something that I think further exacerbates this divide. Chess players and mathematicians. This is a sentence in the novel. It is so short and effective, and it trusts the readers. Do you understand what Rooney is referring to? The stereotypes she's evoking to paint her image. Rooney's prose is seldom praised, but she's incredibly talented at conjuring both images and feelings in but a few words. And while it is effective, it isn't simple. And while it is very good at creating feelings and summarizing relationships, nobody is calling Rooney a poet. What Rooney focuses on is getting her language to say as much as she possibly can in as few words as possible. Rooney's prose will definitely divide readers. What we consider beautiful writing is subjective, and while I personally adore Rooney's prose, I can definitely see some people saying, meh, what's the big deal? But I have rushed over the thing that I think further divides readers, the trust Rooney places in them. Every author must struggle with the line between under-explaining and over-explaining. As readers, we need to understand what's happening, why those things are happening. We need to follow the plot. Not just the plot, we need to understand the characters, the themes, the ideas, the motivations. But we don't need them all laid out and explained in microscopic details. That would take us out of the novel. We need the smallest quantity of information that gives us the largest insight. And we're all different readers. We all need a different amount of explanation at different points in a novel. But that's a conundrum that every writer must face. Why is Rooney special? And characters and relationships are of course central to Rooney's novels. Rooney basically confesses as much in her third novel, Beautiful World, Where Are You?, when the central character, a successful author, declares she wrote books about people and relationships. And if some people look at Ivan and think nobody would ever think it's okay not to give up your seat on public transport to a pregnant woman, then maybe that character requires a bit more explanation. But Rooney is trusting that you will get it, that you will understand Ivan's motivation and logic, and she will move on. Awesome if you get it. Terrible if you don't. And while Ivan might be a simple character and easy to understand, other characters may not. And I'm essentially saying right now that either you get Rooney and hence love her, or you don't and hence hate her. And that might feel a little condescending if you don't like her. But it's not about intelligence, it's about experience. On the screen is 3 statements. They are written in Korean, German, and Swahili. It is Very simple and easy to understand these statements if you speak those languages. Otherwise, they're impossible to understand. Rooney's characters are easy to understand if you've met people like them before, because her prose is channeling your life experience to describe a character. But imagine if you'd never met a mathematician or a chess player before. How empty is that description? I would like to think that when we read literary fiction, especially works like Rooney, which are so character focused, we gain understanding if we accept characters and not judge them. If, like Ivan and his opinions about pregnant women on trains, we decenter our own experiences from the moment and center somebody else, we get more out of the novel that way. That's something that I think maybe Rooney is potentially aware of, because a lot of the arguments and conflicts between characters in Intermezzo come from characters centering themselves in the situation and not other people. Peter is uncomfortable with Ivan dating older women, but this comes from his own discomfort with the relationship he has with Naomi, his belief that there is something wrong with himself. Peter is manifesting his own guilty feelings onto Margaret and her treatment of Ivan, that is, despite never having met Margaret. Peter's guilt at his own actions come out in an overprotective big brother way, which does come across as a little controlling. Ivan is having money difficulties due to working freelance and having some problems collecting an outstanding invoice. He discloses the troubles he's having to Peter, and Peter promptly offers to pay his rent if Ivan isn't paid in time. There is something symbolic in this act that sums up the relationship. Ivan never considers Peter as the solution to his predicament. His money seems a part of him, not something he has. But Peter rushes in to help, to act as a protector, and while it is a generous offer, there is also a little bit of an assumption of incompetence in there too. Ivan solves the issue by calling his real estate agent up and arranging to pay the rent a week late. Then he creates a system to send invoices earlier. He is very capable of not just solving the problem as it is initially, but learning from the problem and creating a system so that the problem doesn't occur again. Peter's desire to help represents his desire to martyr himself at every opportunity. Ivan is a very talented chess player, and chess is something I've personally developed a bit of enjoyment of playing over the last 12 months. I play online most days, and while I confess I'm pretty terrible at putting my chess knowledge into action, I do feel like I understand a considerable amount of it, and I cannot help but to be impressed by the level of research Rooney has put into this subject. I was expecting chess could have equally have been judo or Connect 4, a competition, a game. Ivan would win, lose, draw, he would train, he would study, it would be a plot point, but that it would essentially be interchangeable with something else. But either Rooney is a fan of chess herself, or she studied it properly for this novel. She has included chess notations, that is, he opened with the move d4, the names of common openings such as the English or Sicilian. She's included gambits, forks, pins, forcing moves, Magnus Carlsen, blitz chess, classical chess, an explanation of the difference between an international master and a grandmaster, and, key to the plot, an explanation of a norm. And it is all seamless. If you're not sure who Magnus Carlsen is, you soon have a pretty good idea when Peter jokes that Ivan's new girlfriend is probably a wannabe chess star with a poster of Carlsen on her bedroom wall. This also maybe provides a bit of understanding to what Peter thinks Ivan's ability with women is. It is clearly evident that Rooney makes sure she knows what she is writing about. But when an author researches, it can be very tempting to include everything you've researched in the novel, but Rooney has struck the perfect balance, where if you have no interest in chess, you are not bored, but if you are interested in chess, there's enough for you to geek out about. Think a little bit Queen's Gambit-esque. And as yet, I have not mentioned the themes of Intermezzo. Now, of course it does have themes, but of the 5 elements I look at when I review a novel, plot, prose, setting, characters, and themes, the themes are unusually low in importance, especially for a literary fiction novel. Maybe this is another reason Rooney divides readers. Rooney instead values the characters above all else. Her themes are slaves to her characters and their relationships. Ivan was a bit of an incel, an anti-feminist, but as Ivan points out himself in the novel, people change. And can we judge 23-year-old Ivan for the arguments of 16-year-old Ivan? Peter still does. And how often will you be having a conversation with a family member who you used to see daily because you lived with them, but now that you've moved out of the family home and you don't see them so often, they say something about you that makes you realise they're still judging you on who you were when you last lived together. Rooney is exploring the idea of personal change and this time-locked idea we have of our siblings. These themes funnel back into the building of characters and relationships. The same is true for the theme of age gap relationship. Conversely, it would be easy to have themes of mental illness and autism in this novel, but Sally Rooney shies away from these themes. Maybe they would make caricatures of her characters. Maybe she believes labels get in the way of descriptions. After all, plenty of people have a mental illness or autism, and while they might share traits, they're all very different people, and so too are all the characters in Rooney's novel. I'd like to thank my wonderful Patreons for their support, and if you liked this video, consider signing up. And remember, it costs nothing to hit that thumbs up button or subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.